Oh hi, I didn't see you there. My name is Bliss Foster. Today we will be talking about why it is that all clothes tend to look the same. When you walk into a Target, when you walk into a Macy's, when you walk into a fashion boutique even, why is it that everything just tends to look, feel, and be shaped the same? It's because it is the same. We, in the wonderful world of fashion obsessives, tend to live for stuff like this, or this, or this, or my personal favorite runway look of all time, this. But it's really weird because once we've established a wardrobe of basics that we really like, where we have all of the clothes that we technically need to live our lives, and we start looking for stuff that has a little bit more expression to it, it's really hard to find that stuff, especially if you are into stuff like this. Why is that? Why does it just look like everything just was someone doing a small variation, just a few tugs and pulls on jacket, t-shirt, pants? Why? I had a video a while back that talked about the other side of this question, where we talked about trends and trend forecasting a whole lot. For this one, we're going to be talking about something completely different. Da, comrade, it is time to talk about labor and production. We're getting into this really fast, buckle up. Just about all fashion objects are made using an existing pattern, one that's already been designed by somebody else and that has nothing to do with the current person making a piece of clothing right now. For those who don't know, I'm going to give a quick rundown of how this works. Let the record show that I do not know how to draft or make patterns myself, so anybody who has some more insights to share on this, I would love for you to do so down in the comments. I'm going to use footage here of the Modeliste studio to demonstrate how patterns get turned into clothes. It should be noted that the problem that we're talking about here is not with the Modeliste studio. I'm using their stuff because they make really beautiful footage, but those guys are incredible pattern drafters. They're incredibly innovative. They are not part of the problem we are discussing in this video. Everyone should subscribe to their channel, links in the description. Patterns begin as flat drawings, kind of like blueprints for a building. You can then cut out each of those pieces and use them to guide yourself as you cut out the actual pieces of fabric that will be used for creating the garment. You sew those fabric pieces together and voila, you have clothes. That process is much more complicated than that, but I'm just giving you the basics so that we can keep moving. But okay, here's the deal. Most people, when they're getting into patterns, do not start by drafting their own. They go find an existing pattern and then they modify it to suit their needs. Why is this done? Because pattern drafting is really complicated. It involves a lot of math, and if your ambitions are there, it requires a lot of engineering. And especially if you're thinking of making different sizes, that'll require what's called grading to get different sized pieces to fit together and all end up looking the same but bigger or smaller. The process gets very, very complicated. And the reality is just that fashion works on a really tight schedule. The turnaround for this stuff is insane. So when you're on a tight deadline and you're trying to create innovative stuff, it's entirely possible that what you're trying to do has even already been done, because there really is only so much you can do with a standard block pattern that's based on a horizontal grid. That's not to say that there isn't innovation that comes out of using a block pattern, but when you're drafting an innovative bodice with a block pattern, you're most likely going to have to put the darts in the same place as most other bodices to have room for breasts or a cinch at the waist. This is a pretty linear path and it doesn't provide a lot of room for experimentation. So in this way, the instinct to use one of those standard block patterns is truly a paradigm for most of the fashion industry. It also doesn't help that fabric always comes in a rectangular shape that's wrapped up onto a bolt. So, usually these block patterns end up being the building blocks for very basic clothes that just have interesting finishing details. And this is what leads to this problem that we're discussing in this video, which is just a standard shirt with interesting buttons, or a standard hoodie with interesting drawstrings, or a standard t-shirt that just has a print on the sleeve. And I do want to be clear, there's nothing inherently wrong with that either. We can all appreciate cool aesthetics that are building over time and stuff, but if the entire market is just dominated by all clothes look the same, there are interesting finishing details, is that not boring? But there is hope out there. There are designers that are not just introducing variations on what we've seen before and adding in a fresh color palette or some interesting finishing details. One time on my private Discord, we had a damn masterclass where one of our power users walked us through some of the best examples of innovative pattern design. It was so great. I had nothing to contribute to that conversation. I was just sitting there scrolling on my phone, just being like, this is fucking crazy. Crazy, crazy, beautiful stuff. Okay, so this sameness. Let's look a little bit more at what is actually causing this problem. When you buy a garment, no one handmade that garment, but at the same time, clothes are not made by robots. Clothes are made by machines that are guided by people. Like everything else in the world, there are standard machines that are commonplace in most facilities, and then there are machines that are rarer and more expensive that perform niche functions. But the vast majority of fashion brands in the world are only looking at this whole market of creating clothes from the perspective of, how do we make this cheaper? How can we offer the absolute cheapest goods that will still give our customers the illusion that they have incredible choices? Because like many industries in the world now, there is no innovation, or at least there's no innovation that the customer benefits from. Nearly all innovation in fashion is geared towards making cheaper goods. How can we dye fabric more cheaply? What is the least expensive blend of cotton and polyester? How thin can we make these buttons? Let's take it back to the fashion side of things. When we all think, at least everybody in this little community of fashion obsessives, we think of fashion as a form of personal expression. But there's this disconnect because the vast majority of brands think of apparel as a commodity. Clothing is just a business model with low profit margins and a diminishing customer base. So the only options from their perspective are to raise prices or to cut costs. And guess what? It's 100% cost cutting. I'm 32 and I remember being in high school and going into an H&M for the first time and thinking, wow, you can buy a shirt here brand new for $45? Granted, my family thrifted for most of my life and I had not been in many stores up to that point. I thought shirts were ridiculously expensive. But then as time went on, Fashion Nova came around and now you could buy a shirt for $25. And now the great Satan has arrived with Shein and you can now buy a button-up shirt for $9. I'm going to resist the urge here to talk at length about how the customers of Shein are directly supporting dangerous working conditions, exploitive pay, and child labor, and we'll turn again to how is this possible. It's all efficiency. And that ties us back to the basic pattern block, and that's why clothes all look the same. It's efficiency. If you don't have to make a brand new pattern, if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, if we don't have to do something new, then just make the same shirt and put a different print on it. And abuse workers. They also do that. If you search button-up shirt on Shein, you'll see 26,000 results. But those are not separate shirts. It's 3 or 4 shirts that have been made in different colors and different prints, and ooh, this one just has a print on the sleeve. If you do end up fact-checking me on that, by the way, you should do it in an incognito tab so Shein is not following you around the internet for the next 6 months. I learned that lesson the hard way. We got into this a little while ago in the Carol Christian poll video, but the fashion industry thinks of it as their job to create billions of options for you. They're constantly vying for your attention, and they're vying for your attention using an empty promise. The promise that among these billions of options, literally billions more options than there are people on earth, among these seemingly infinite choices, you will find yourself. You'll find perfect clothes that were meant for you. But I mean, this isn't true. The fast fashion industry creates the illusion of choice, and what we end up being stuck with is a bunch of poorly made crap that was made in awful facilities that abuse their workers. And on a subconscious level, I think that all of us know that. Like we understand that we're being played. I mean, that's, for me at least, that's why when I was still buying fast fashion stuff, that's why it ended up on the floor after my second time of wearing it. I love clothes. I love fashion. I love clothes. I'm not above saying that I love buying clothes. But we have got to find a better way of spending our money. I mean, it's said so often now that it's kind of a trope at this point, but it really is true. Buy less stuff and just buy better stuff. If you love beautiful runway looks and you spend hours every day thinking about these things, just like me, then don't settle for other things when you're actually buying the clothes that are gonna go on your own body. And I assume that no one here is able to buy couture, but there is a happy balance between spending $10,000 on a dress and buying a $9 shirt and then doing all these mental gymnastics so you don't have to think about what went into making it. If you already have clothes that work really well for you, please keep those clothes, wear those clothes out. And when you're getting something that's new to you, get it secondhand. See if you can find a really good deal on a designer piece that's been gently worn by somebody else. I have a whole video in the backlog that's about finding designer clothes for really cheap on the internet. But But if you are buying something new, let that new thing be something that's really, really special. I can say that the number of brand new things that I've bought in the last 3 years has maybe happened. I might have bought 3 brand new articles of clothing in the last 3 years. And if you're in a position where you truly have next to no discretionary income, I have been there multiple different times in my life. Believe me, it is worth it to wait. I mean, if you need a cheap suit for a job interview and you literally don't have a suit, go get a cheap suit with my blessing. But if you're buying clothes because you just really love clothes, please be purposeful about those purchases. It is worth it to not settle. That's it. If you learned anything from this video, please comment below, say what you learned. If someone else already said your thing, I want to hear it in your words. Type it out. I read every single comment and it is a huge bright spot of my day. And go join that Patreon. I'm only able to make videos like this and all of the runway analyses that I do because of literal financial support. You're all wonderful. I love you a lot. I'll talk to you soon.